Okay, good evening, everyone. We will now start this meeting of the City of Lowell Election Commissioners at July 27, 2021 at 5:35 p.m. First item is roll call. So Chairwoman Zaniku.
Here.
Vice Chairman Poe.
Here.
Commissioner Anthus.
Here.
Commissioner Patton.
Here.
All commissioners are present. Moving to item 2A, voting to accept meeting minutes. Just for the record, I just got the meeting minute notes from Mark on Monday, so I'm in the process of finishing those up. My hope is that by this week, I'll have the meeting minutes for all our prior meetings finished. I'll email them to the commissioners so you can review it, and then at the next meeting, you give that vote to. Okay. So moving on to new business. If I may, Chairwoman, I asked if I could take an item out of order. It would be item 3D, discussion regarding expert assistance on dividing the districts.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. So pursuant to the Election Commission's vote and motion from the last meeting, the city has retained the services of an expert, Professor Charles Stewart of MIT. Just to briefly go over, he's a Keenan Sarlin Distinguished Professor of Political Science at MIT. Professor Stewart has taught at MIT since 1985 and is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. His areas of research include elections, election administration, congressional politics, and American political development. Since 2001, Professor Stewart has been a member of the Caltech MIT Voting Technology Project, which is a leading research effort that applies scientific analysis to questions regarding election technology, administration, and election reform. And he has been recognized by MIT for his undergraduate teaching, being named to the second class of the McVicker Fellows in 1994, and was awarded the Baker Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching, and is also the recipient of the Class of 1960 Fellowship. We're happy to have Professor Stewart, and he is also with us in this meeting, attending from Zoom. Good evening, Professor Stewart.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
We're going to use our academic titles in the meeting?
Just as a matter of courtesy. But having introduced Professor Stewart, I think that fulfills item 3D. So moving to item 3A, which is again a discussion on polling locations for the city's 8 municipal districts for the 2021 municipal elections. Chairwoman, if it's all right, I can provide sort of a brief summary regarding sort of yesterday and sort of where we're at today. It's up to you.
Yes, please.
Okay. So just to briefly summarize, when Professor Stewart was retained, we had a brief preliminary meeting yesterday involving Chairwoman Zaniku and Professor Stewart and myself, along with a member of the law department, just to sort of discuss, have an initial discussion on sort of what the Election Commission was looking at, issues relative to the subdivision of the districts, as well as polling locations. From that meeting, and Professor Stewart can further elaborate on that meeting, some discussion was made regarding the potential polling locations, areas that could be looked at in terms of the districts, as well as sort of a initial inquiry into potential additional polling locations in certain districts. Now, obviously, this discussion and analysis is preliminary, and until the federal consent decree is amended and it is approved by the federal court, we are prohibited from subdividing. So this meeting yesterday was essentially a preliminary meeting just to go over the issues and to sort of get the ball rolling. Obviously, this is going to have to be a thorough and cautious process in terms of review, which Professor Stewart can further elaborate on. But I just wanted to sort of bring that up as a sort of a brief summary of what yesterday's meeting was about. So
Thank you. Professor Stewart, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. And again, thank you for inviting me to help you all with your with this transition to this really historic change in how y'all have been, will be electing city councilors and members of the school committee moving forward. And we had the meeting yesterday. I thought it was very productive. I mean, it seems to me, and I'm only just now wading into the documents and becoming familiar with the case, but it seems to me that the city faces an important set of trade-offs in figuring out whether to divide the districts, and if so, where polling places should be located. On the one hand, we know from a lot of peer-reviewed research that when you move polling places away from voters, they're less likely to vote. And so, and that's intuitively obvious, but it's nice that the science supports that as well. The other thing that we know from the research in election administration is that the more complicated issues are, the administration of elections, the more likely there are to be errors, and the more likely those errors are to disenfranchise voters or at the very least create confusion both in the process and the mind of voters. And Lowell, I mean, I don't need to tell y'all that you're in the unfortunate circumstances where you're living with the old precincts and districts that sometimes cut across them. And so for, there's almost a guarantee for some level of confusion, both among voters and perhaps among poll workers who will be dealing with voters who are used to doing things particular ways, going to particular precincts, trying to find the proper polling location. And it seems to me that this is a trade-off because the fewer polling locations you have, the more likely it is that you have a smaller number of polling places, you have a smaller number of poll workers. It's easier to rely on experienced poll workers who've been in the difficult precincts in the past. So you can really, focus your attention on the difficult places that you might be worried about. So if things were costless, as many precincts as possible, given the possibilities of confusion the first time this is being done, uncertainty about the precincts, more polling places can be a liability, especially if not implemented really well. And so, the conversation yesterday was really about, trying to find polling places that could meet the needs for greater proximity to some voters. And then, I think moving forward, whatever y'all end up doing, needs to keep in mind the manageability, both for the elections department and then the on-the-ground poll workers when everything is said and done. So that's at a 30,000 foot level. There's one very practical thing that I would just note in the preliminary analysis I've done today, and it just illustrates why I think it's important to look at these issues very carefully. I was comparing today the distance between voters and their polling place as proposed for 2021 with where they were assigned to vote in 2020 in the presidential election. And it turns out that even with the reduction in polling places because of the redistribution, about 90% of the voters in districts 8, 7, and 6 end up being either in their same polling place or closer than they were in 2000. So that's just with having one polling place. You've actually managed, because of other redistributions, to move on net move people closer to their polling place. On the other hand, and overall, even in the other districts, more people are being moved close to polling places than being moved further away. Nonetheless, it's in the other districts where you see, larger numbers of people being moved away. So that's a long way of saying that, if one is concerned about moving people further away from precincts, there are parts of the city that are more problematic than others. And this, of course, is before we take into account the issue of District 4 and being above the river. So in any case, I'm delighted to be working with the city of Lowell. This is a really important work that y'all are doing, and I'm glad to help.
Thank you, Professor. With that being said, again, high level, that it was just a conversation yesterday, a conversation starter. It was a great meeting that we did have, and kind of just to get the professor some background into Lowell and what the body of the commission is expecting and wants, which are more than one polling location per district, and that's the goal here. So I just wanted to highlight that and just ensure that that message has been carried through and understood. So all right, so do we want to go back to 3A?
Yes, I think we were on 3A actually for that, and yeah, but I just wanted to take 3D just so I could introduce Professor Stewart. Yeah, so in regards to 3A, sort of just adding on to sort of our initial, preliminary discussions yesterday, we sort of took a look at certain of the districts and, highlighted certain districts where, I think there were more, pronounced issues than others.
Yeah.
If you are comfortable, I can certainly sort of identify some of those.
Absolutely. And can you also just follow up on the, I guess, the phone calls and things that you made?
Certainly, yeah. So again, just to go over some additional things. The chairwoman, Professor Stewart, and the elections office, we sort of looked at the prior polling locations in 2020 as well as 2021, and we looked at sort of the districts on a one-to-one basis to see which districts where subdividing made sense or seemed logical, and other districts where subdividing did not seem practical or would actually cause more problems than than they would solve. And sort of based on sort of that examination, it was sort of concluded that District 6 and District 7, given that they were very compact, very small, very close together, and very.
Excuse me, Elliot, before you continue, since we're on Zoom, can you share your screen with
Oh, sure.
everyone?
Yeah, I'll share a screen of the map. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Just so that everyone knows what we're discussing.
So here again is the map right now of the city's new municipal electoral districts and the city's current polling locations. So and again, these are just simply preliminary analysis of it. There was an examination of District 6 and District 7, and given that these were very compact municipal districts, very close together, and the polling locations were very central to them. Sort of the initial discussion made it seem clear that there wasn't really any advantage to subdividing these two districts, 7 and 6. 7 would be serviced by the senior center, which, as we know in past elections, has been a very good location, very centrally located, a lot of parking, good public transit access, and in fact, it was used as a early voting polling location, and it's centrally located in 7. And same with 6, the Morey School right here, again, another centrally located polling location, a very compact district, centrally located, easily accessible. So, that was sort of examined. And then additional sort of analysis was done at districts that had 2 or more polling locations that were already there. So for instance, and something that was sort of looked at was when, if at all possible, the city should try to use its current and pre-existing polling locations, given that it promotes voter continuity, voters are familiar with these locations, so on and so forth. So by way of example, if we look at District 1 right here in the Pawtuckettville area, we already have 2 polling locations that the city has used previously in that area, Pawtucket Memorial and McAvenue. So as the city, as the election commission, and as Professor Stewart continue to look at this this issue, to the extent that subdividing District 1 is viewed as appropriate, there are at least 2 polling locations there that could facilitate that. Similarly, with District 3, just using my cursor over in this area. So right now, there are sort of 3 polling locations, and with Immaculate Conception Church and the Riley School being the ones that are, the ones most central to most of the voters in 3. So that's another example of a district that, should the election commission and Professor Stewart deem that that would be appropriate to subdivide, that's a district that has 2 polling locations that could serve for voters. Additionally, and one of the issues, if I may, to discuss is District 4. So District 4, during these preliminary discussions, was sort of highlighted as a particularly challenging district in light of the fact that the main division for that district really is a geographic one, the river, dividing this area right here in District 4 and the voters there from the rest of District 4. Sort of taking a look at, just putting aside the northern section for now, looking at the rest of District 4, it was noted that, again, given its central location and the fact that it has previously been used as a polling location, that Lowell High School would, the Lowell High School cafeteria would probably ably serve, most of the, of District 4, in that area. It's a common polling location. Voters in those areas have commonly voted at Lowell High School before. So again, sort of in a preliminary analysis standpoint, that would be sort of an appropriate central location for 4. Regarding the northern section of 4, there was some initial discussion as to what could serve as a polling location in 4. And part of the tricky thing is that there aren't really many properties or buildings within 4 itself that can really serve as a polling location within 4, although our research is still forthcoming. So it was sort of examined, and one potential option for that is you could hold voting for those in the northern section of District 4 and for certain voters in District 2 in Greenhelge Elementary School. And sort of in keeping with prior elections, when the wards and precincts there, 5-2 and 5-3, in previous elections, they did vote at Greenhelge. Now, obviously this is a preliminary analysis, and we also have to take into account how we can do it. But that was a sort of a suggested thing that we can take a look at. Finally, during our preliminary discussions, we took a look at Districts 5 and Districts 8 right here. So this is District 5 and District 8. And you will note that in District 5, there's currently only 1 polling location that's within it, Butler Middle School. So, certain preliminary discussion on that was, to the extent the Election Commission wants an additional polling location there, what are some additional properties or locations that could serve as polling locations within District 5? And obviously, some of the important concerns that need to be looked at is to make sure that these locations are ADA accessible and compliant. so that voters that have disabilities can freely access the polls, just as voters without disabilities. And the fact that these locations cannot serve alcohol. So during voting, and that particular law, for those that need reference, would be Mass General Law, Chapter 54, Section 24, which states in part, alcohol shall not be sold in any portion of the building designated as a polling location during voting hours or while ballots are being counted. So, so there was that to take into consideration. 5. Regarding 8, 8 currently has 2 polling locations, the Daily and the Bailey. There was some discussion, however, as to seeing if there was a alternative or potential polling location a bit more north of District 8, so that it might be a little closer to voters that might be residing in the more northern section of District 8. Part of the challenge of that is that if you look at a map, most of the area north within District 8 is sort of commercial property, with the Rourke Bridge sort of being in that area. So having sort of gone through that sort of preliminary analysis, we sort of had a discussion as to potential alternative locations in District 5 and District 8. Chairwoman Zaniku had several suggestions as to certain locations available in District 5 and District 8 that could potentially serve as alternative polling locations. In District 5, among those would be the VFW, the Lowell Spanish Seventh-day Adventist Church, and a location originally believed to be the clubhouse, but it's at Highland Parkway. And then in District 8, again, it was a bit challenging to try to find locations north, but one that was potentially identified was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that list, I spent most of the day today and last night reaching out to all of those locations on the list, trying to reach out to owners, directors, seeing if they would be interested or available. You know, for the record, I left messages last night with all of these entities, and I followed up this morning with additional phone messages. I also sent emails to those locations that had emails addresses on their website, just indicating our interest. I did receive a response today from Sarita Berrios, who is the manager of the community building for the Lowell Housing Authority at Highland Parkway. She indicated preliminary interest in having the property available, and she invited me to take a walkthrough of the property. So I came over with my tape measure, and Ms. Berrios was very kind enough to let me into the property. I was able to take measurements and take an examination of the facilities. My initial assessment is that it is ADA compliant. There are handicap ramps available, both at the front entrance and the side entrance. So also taking a look at the interior, there is, I think, and I have to do some additional analysis. So again, this is all preliminary, but I think there's sufficient space to set up at least 2 check-in sort of tables, poll booths, and checkout areas. And again, this is all sort of an initial analysis. So we still have to look at this carefully. There is sufficient power outlets there. I did a check just so I could make sure that they were near tables. And having spoken with Ms. Berrios, the location could be set up to allow for single flow. And what I mean by that is, in the elections last year, as you know, due to COVID, we had redesigned our polling locations to allow for single flow, so that voters come into one polling location, vote, and then exit out from another door. So as to try to prevent, voter intermingling as much as possible. Unfortunately, in light of what's going on with COVID, even though New England is still, generally in a better spot in terms of its vaccinations, we still have to be cognizant and mindful of the potential need for COVID precautions in our elections this year. So taking an initial look at this location, it wouldn't enable us to do that sort of kind of setup where voters come in one door and exit out the other. Ms. Barrios indicated that she is going to reach out to her superiors regarding the hours of election to see if the community center can be opened or kept open for the hours in which it will be required on election day. But she is optimistic, but until we hear further on that, we will not know. But so at least I think there is, though, some grounds for optimism regarding that for District 5. If the commission and Professor Stewart thinks that it would be a wise idea to subdivide that. In regards to District 8, again, the location in question was as a potential site would be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on 421 Princeton Boulevard. In terms of my attempts to contact, I made several phone calls last night and this morning. There was not it was the number that was listed on their website. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get in touch with anyone at the church, and they didn't have a voicemail system in place. So today, I also made an attempt to come to the church in person to see if I could speak with someone. I arrived at the location at 12:03 p.m. today and made an attempt to see someone at the church. Unfortunately, all the doors were locked, and I didn't see an office that was open. So if any of the commissioners know of a potential contact person for the church that we could maybe reach out to provide some initial inquiries, I think that might be best, because as of this stage, I haven't been able to find a traditional means of contacting the church to sort of send inquiries. So I just want to, update and inform the commission regarding my current efforts so far on that.
Thank you.
So that's sort of where we're at as of this stage.
Thank you very much. That was great work. As usual. Thank you. Anybody have any-
No, I had what I had to say last Tuesday. It's not just gonna be a record when we get it.
Okay.
So we're working on it.
So I think we'll just continue our careful efforts to sort of look at this issue. And again, just to indicate, for the record, until the consent decree is approved by the federal court, the election commission, can't subdivide at this stage. But I think it's good to, begin a careful analysis now, again, with our expert. And, so we can be prepared to move forward, when we are ready. So.
Well, we can draw the lines now, we just can't implement it, correct? I mean, there's nothing that says we can't sit down at the map and say, if they approve it, here's what we're going to do.
Well, I would submit, though, that, it has to be carefully looked at, and especially since, it's still a open question as to if you can subdivide, how you would do it in such a way that would enable us to sort of maintain our voter lists and things like that. I know we are working actively with the Secretary of State's office on our options relative to how you can do that. I know.
Madam Solicitor, if she can give us an update.
No, the city solicitor isn't on. She is out.
Has anyone on to give us an update on that?
I don't believe on this meeting because of the city council meeting, but we can certainly, I can certainly follow up with them relative to that for the commission. So.
And we don't have anybody from LHS here tonight.
I know, we do not.
Do you want to stop sharing?
Oh, yes, here, I'll stop sharing at this point, so, okay. Chair, did you want to add anything else to this, or?
So I'm I just wanted to go on record saying that I am pretty optimistic that we will be getting 2 or more polling locations for the districts that really need it. And I think that's a great compromise. And it just makes sense. And so what we want to do is ensure that everyone who wants to vote gets to vote. And then we also want to do what makes sense, which is not close down polling locations, but ensure that they are open, enough are open for people to have access. As the professor indicated, we did do analysis, and it makes sense that the districts that currently have a polling location that served 90% of the voters from the last election, we don't really need to touch those. As they're going to continue to service the voters that have participated, plus more. Obviously we're hoping for more this year as well, just 7 and 6. And as Elliot just went through the other districts, we really did do a broad analysis, and the commission standpoint is to subdivide these districts that need it. That's where we're moving forward to. It's unfortunate that we don't have an update on the LHS piece of it, as well as the Secretary of State yet again. I'm kind of disappointed in that. I thought we would have a concrete update. Our next meeting is next Tuesday. I'm thinking that we should have an update as early as even tomorrow or Thursday on those questions. Because again, time is of the essence, and that's what the solicitor basically highlighted in each of her discussions on this. And we need to ensure that we give everyone enough time to make these changes. I wanted to give an opportunity again for the professor to speak on this after hearing the update again, and see what he has to say.
Thank you. I don't know that I have much else to say. That we're constrained by the availability of locations and other logistical issues. But the work is being done, and so now it's a matter of seeing if if the commission wants to move forward, and if the new the places that have been identified, especially the new places, are suitable. But I'm happy to, again, I'm delighted to be able to provide the expertise that I can provide, but this sounds like a good path that the commission is following.
Thank you. So Elliot, do we need another motion on record in order to have this as the plan in action now?
No, I think at this stage, I think it'd be best just to, again, move forward, and then as, it's further developed, then, until I think you've sort of settled on your locations, I think it doesn't make sense at this stage just to make another motion at this stage. I think you can just, carry it on to the next meeting, so.
So LHS to be there at the next meeting, we'll find another vendor. I mean, this stuff about they can't program the algorithm. I was watching the Olympics and I saw the Japanese put 1,800 drones in the sky looking like the globe. And all we're asking them to do is sort out their election day.
Okay, I just brought them on. Okay, with that, we can move on to item 3B, which is a discussion of early voting hours and locations for the 2021 preliminary elections. Again, this is more of just an update. As the commission is aware, the state legislature has approved the special legislation, the extension of the special legislation to permit for early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot boxes through the end of this year. However, based on my review, the governor has still not yet signed it. So until the legislation is signed by the governor, we're still constrained as to, what action we can take. But I just wanted to, let the commissioners know that we are likely within the next week or so, when the governor signs it, we'll be able to designate early in-person voting for our municipal elections this year. And we'll have to take a look at the final legislation, but I believe municipalities are permitted up to 10 days of early in-person voting. Yeah. So again, once that legislation's approved, the commissioners can, in the next meeting, vote to designate early voting, early in-person voting, and the hours in which you will do it. Again, I would, submit that based on feedback we received from last year, the Lowell Senior Center was considered a very popular location for early in-person voting. Additionally speaking, I think the best approach would be to have weekends for early voting as well as weekdays. So with weekdays, we would again use City Hall hours for weekdays. So again, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, it'd be from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Actually, no, I'm sorry, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. For Tuesdays, we'd have 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and Fridays 8 to noon. And then Saturdays and Sundays that have to speak to the Senior Center, but we'd also have hours available on both Saturday and Sunday for in-person early voting.
Could we also start thinking about, I know we can't do this yet, but I know that in the past we had the city of Lowell, the City Hall as an early voting option as well. Could we also think about that as well as the Senior Center?
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at it, and I've already started to sort of think about it, and something that we could potentially do, because the state computers are here, and you can note, we could possibly have the elections office itself be an early voting polling location. So a person comes in, obviously because of COVID, it had to be one at a time, and we had to set up something. And again, I have to look at it, but that could be a potential option as well. But again, I still have to look at that because it depends on voter files and things like that. Another potential option would be to do early voting at the Senior Center, and then maybe when the hours are done, we can take that poll pad and then go to another, we could then maybe go to City Hall or another location and keep it open, to allow for some early voting after. But again, this is all preliminary at this stage, but we are taking a look at that to, given that we're going to have early in-person voting available, the goal is to take advantage of it. So for voters who are interested. So again, once the governor approves that legislation, I'll let the commission know, and then we can go from there. So. And then finally, with item 3C, I just wanted to give the commissioners an update on our ballot drop boxes. The ballot drop boxes that we used last year, unfortunately, were damaged in the winter. We actually had a snow plow hit one of them. So I wanted to inform you, though, that new ballot drop boxes at City Hall have been ordered. So it's my understanding that we have received quotes for them, and we're in the process of obtaining them again for this year. Again, I wanted to remind the commissioners that the Secretary of State's office did provide guidance last year relative to the safe and secure setup of our ballot boxes. And they did emphasize that any ballot drop box that you set up has to, if you are keeping it open 24/7, has to be set up in a location that is monitored 24/7. So what we're planning to do, just like we did last year, is that, with the two ballot drop boxes, one of them will be located on the Merrimack side, and the other one will be located in the plaza. The location in the plaza would be open 24/7 because it's right next to the police station, and it would be monitored. And then the one out on Merrimack Street, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put my hand up to block the camera, but the one on Merrimack Street that way will keep open during the day, and then at night we'll secure it so that no one can sabotage it. Unfortunately, in 2020 we had that incident in Boston where that person put a fire or a lit match into one of the ballot drop boxes in Boston and burned it all up. So we definitely want to avoid that. I'm not saying that would happen in Lowell, but you need to take every precaution. So I think a similar procedure, just like we did last year, where we monitor the one near the police station and then keep the other one secure.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it in terms of new business. So I think sort of at this stage, if there's nothing else, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, all right, so I have a motion from from Vice Chair Pope, seconded by Commissioner Anthony. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, this meeting of the Election Commission has ended at 6:16 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Professor Stewart, for your attendance. We appreciate it.
Yes.